deep dive mythology,
lore,
Dungeons and Dragons.
Hello and welcome
to the Creative Thinker Podcast.
Hey, Michael, guess what?
What?
You're awesome.
Hey, man, you're awesome too. And you listening to us are awesome as well. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day.
Welcome in, welcome in. We are jumping into another Halo episode. We have our little warthog here.
Heck yeah.
For us to share with you little display item.
Yeah, and if you're just listening and not watching, a Warthog is one of the vehicles in Halo. It's iconic. It is like this giant all-terrain vehicle that has a mounted turret in the back, machine gun turret. You get to play it in Halo 1. It's a lot of fun. It is an iconic vehicle of the Halo franchise. Speaking of iconic and things of the Halo franchise, today we're going to be talking about the two different races of the Halo franchise. There we go. Love it. Love it. We're going to be talking about the Jiralhanae, or the Brutes, and the Sangheili, or the elites of Halo.
Hell yeah. I'm excited for this one. These are my favorite aliens to fight.
Mhm.
It was back at a time in my life when I put all video games on the hardest difficulty. I don't do that anymore. Don't judge me.
Yeah.
I put it on easy because I don't have time for that anymore.
Heard.
But when I played it on a high difficulty, then the Jiralhanae or the Sangheili were like, oh man, this is going to be a really hard round.
Yeah, for sure. So, the Sangheili, or the elites, are enemies that you see in Halo 1. So we see them from the beginning of the Halo franchise, and then the Jiralhanae are introduced in Halo 2, and they are very difficult because a little bit of background in the Halo 2 production. It was very rushed, and so there were a lot of things that they wanted to add into the game that, just because of time constraints, they weren't able to. And one of those things was going to be the brutes have a reaction when they get meleeed, so that they would actually like stagger back, like in most of the other creatures in the game. And they didn't have time to add that in. So if you played Halo 2 and you had a brute hit, like
You're
coming at
kidding.
you and would like do melee damage after melee damage, and you would try and like hit them to like get a shock so that you could have a little bit of breathing room, and that didn't happen, that's the reason, because they didn't have the time to actually add that into the game.
That's what made them so terrifying, though.
Absolutely.
It's like, you were running for your life once you saw them.
Absolutely.
Holy hell, get away from me.
Yeah. So just a little background and introduction into
Well,
the species we're talking about today.
let's do Jiralhanae first.
Absolutely.
Let's do reverse order of the video games. That way
Yeah.
we can be edgy.
Oh yeah, so edgy. So just kind of a brief overview of what the Jiralhanae are. If you imagine like giant apes, the Jiralhanae are the Wookiees of the Halo universe. There are going to be some obvious differences, but yeah, they if you just kind of picture groomed Wookiees, you have a pretty good idea of what the Jiralhanae are.
Or like a one-headed Etten.
Yeah. If you're talking about D&D, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the Jiralhanae, they're the last of the client species to be incorporated into the Covenant. There were the Jiralhanae, known to most other species simply as brutes due to their impressive size and terrifying ferocity. I'm going to go ahead and go into their biological summary before we go into their homeworld.
I always thought when I was playing the game that it was just like they must have been further out in space, and that's why they showed up in the games last. Not that they actually joined the Covenant last. I thought that was a cool
Yeah.
thing I wasn't expecting.
They were one of the last ones to join the Covenant, and it was pretty contentious when they did join the Covenant. But anyways,
Nice.
we're gonna start on their biological, what these things look like. Like I said, they are the Wookiees of Halo. So they're 8.5 feet tall, going up to 9 feet and 2 inches tall. Right. So these are giants. These are absolute giants, absolute freaks of nature. They weigh anywhere between 1,125 pounds to 1,500 pounds.
Whoa.
So these are, not only are they freaks as far as how tall they are imagine a gorilla. Like they very much meet that aesthetic. They're described as a mix between a gorilla, a rhinoceros, and a bear. So that's what these things are.
Nailed it.
Yeah, and in particular, in our research for the Jiralhanae, this is all particularly the males of their species. And we can get into that here a little bit later. There are assumptions that you can make of the females of this species, that they're probably going to be a little bit leaner, but that's just based off of what we know of the species that we kind of assume it to be.
So they don't even have any lore for the females.
They have, it's very minimal,
Heard.
very, very minimal. And as we get into their history, I think that will become clear as to why it's minimal, and what their roles are.
I had some pretty good questions in Sangheili later too.
Sweet, sweet, sweet.
Maybe you'll have the answer.
Solid, solid. Hopefully I
Resident
do.
Halo expert.
Yeah,
Back to
yeah.
you.
Um, so their massive frame and why they are so huge and so big, so strong, so lean is because their home planet of Doisiak has a 2 times gravity of what Earth's gravity is. So
Ooh,
I imagine like
that's cool.
it's kind of timely, but some Super Saiyan training, like when Goku and Vegeta are on Planet Namek, they increase the gravity to try and get stronger, and that's when you start seeing them kind of get a little bit more built than what they were in Dragon Ball or the early Dragon Ball Z.
Nice.
So they have a thick gray leather hide, and without any grooming, can turn into this thick brown kind of tangled mess of fur. Again, that image of the Wookiee is there. But whenever they are groomed, some of the Jiralhanae have the hair doesn't get as messy as it would be for like the Wookiees and stuff. They wanted to do more have different varieties in Halo 2, but again, they ran out of time. So in Halo 2, we're looking at the Wookiee variety of brutes for the most part, except for Tartarus, who is the boss, and he is kind of the different one. And then as we go into Halo 3, you start seeing more groomed brutes, and then obviously in the later Halo games, they are also a different variety as
Yeah,
well.
in the encyclopedia, they had some really cool looking ones, like where
Oh my
their hair
gosh.
was all kinds of done up.
Yeah,
It was like
yeah.
the red
So
carpet of Johanne.
yeah, so there are different, the way that they groom themselves and the way that they have their aesthetic is shows their loyalty to their clan. So it's usually like their clan
Oh,
has
interesting.
like their clan will have mohawks, their clan will have certain tattoos, certain clans. There are two different species, and what we'll just jump into it now because it's not a super big difference. But one faction is called the Ratol, and they're the more primitive faction. So those are going to be the ones that look most like the Wookiees. And then there's a faction called the Vealoth, and they're the more sophisticated ones. They're the ones that are groomed up a little bit more. They have the tattoos, they have the different hair that's going to separate them, or at least show their loyalty to a certain type of clan just by their appearance.
Interesting. I didn't know that either. Just as a general note for those listening, I'm researching to be able to hang in these episodes, and then Michael already knew most of this stuff, so it's sort of like a good reminder for him.
Mhm.
But for the most part, I'm learning it for the first time. So if I ask a lot of stupid questions, that is why,
Yeah,
because I
no, no,
genuinely have no idea.
you're good. You're
I played
good.
the games and I really enjoyed them, but I didn't really get into the story till recently. So
Yeah, no, I've read a lot of the books, and so their introduction, it's very interesting, right? Because in Halo, you don't see them, and there's a story reason for it now. In Halo 2, you see them, and there's a bigger story reason for that. The reason we see them in Halo 2 is there's some political stuff that's going on, but they have been seen that they were a part of the first contact between the humans and the Covenant. They were on board, and that's the book called Contact Harvest has a lot of the lore for how their clan structure is set up because they are very clan based. They have a chieftain over like their entire race at this point. But there are sub chieftains who are in charge of their clans, and they have like a bunch of different um what do you call it, like rituals and different like kind of circles that you would be in. So if you're like I believe if you're a higher like circle clan leader, then you have more power over a lower circle clan leader.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Well,
um
that leaves me with one question. I know we were going through the biology, but like, you said their planet has double gravity, but
mhm.
what's it look like? Like, is it a,
Yeah, yeah.
just like
So
giant desert or
so again, we're going back to that Wookiee vibe. It is a very
like
lush.
Kashyyyk?
Yeah, imagine Kashyyyk, and that's essentially what we have here. So it is a jungle, a dense jungle planet. They have the bunkers high up in the treetops. They have stuff on the ground level. They have a bunch of like plains and grasslands and things like that. and what kind of differentiates between the Wookiees and the Jiralhanae is there are these lush fields of grass and plains of grass, but it is um not safe because of the nuclear waste that is all around their
Didn't
planet.
see that coming.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll get into the reason here in a little bit.
Okay, cool.
As we're hitting the home world, Doisak is one planet with 3 satellite moons around it, two of which are used for resources, while the other is just a moon. Doesn't really have any type
Nice.
of resources, not inhabitable where the other 2 moons are. The population of Doisiak is 12.5 billion at its highest, and yeah, like I said,
Many.
it is a very lush jungle like planet. As we head back to what these creatures actually look like, they have 3 clawed fingers with an opposable thumb and 2 large cloven 2-toed feet. They have tusks protruding from their mouth. Typically, it's not quite like an orc where there's like the 2 main tusks. It's usually a little bit smaller, and maybe 4 or 5 kind of teeth are kind of showing up over their mouth. Um, these creatures need a lot of meat. They need a very high calorie diet, obviously. Um,
1,500 pounds. You need some meat.
oh yeah,
Need some protein.
that is their preference, and they will eat other species, including humans and other species of the Covenant, uh, because that's what they want. If
What's up,
they
Ongoy?
yeah, exactly. So there's a scene in Halo 2, as we're beginning the introduction of the characters, we see Tartarus and some other Jiralhanae leading in the Arbiter, or who is about to become the Arbiter, a Sangheili who has got his armor removed, and he had just received the mark of shame. He's been tortured publicly for failing in Halo 1, and one of the brutes makes a comment saying, my stomach's hungry. His meat is just the way I like it, seared just the way I like it. So it alludes to the fact that they would eat Sangheili given the chance.
Ew. Who needs the flood if you have Drohane around?
Dude,
You're
for
gonna
real.
just like eating your comrades. That ever happen in the games?
I mean,
Drohane's just eating a person that just ran out and got killed.
it probably is not animation, but lore.
Might be a little
Yes,
gruesome.
it would be correct. It would absolutely be. I think just animating that would not be of importance, but
Heard.
I absolutely would say that would be lore accurate. um,
Nice.
the Jiralhanae have an exceptional sense of smell, which leads them to being great hunters. Um, and this is very interesting. They have this kind of rage, right? We talked about that in Halo 2. Excuse me.
Barbarian cultures almost always fantasy or video games. I'll have rages.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly. And so they can
Interesting. And dragons.
they know, right, we talked about the red dragons going into this rage, so they exude a pheromone that induces this rage like state. So whenever either a comrade goes down, they can go into this rage state. And it's very interesting because as adolescents, before they mature, they don't have the ability to control this, so they just exude pheromones, and sometimes they just go into a rage. And that's
Dang.
wild. Like,
Yeah.
what a wild culture for your youngins to just be raging all the time, which I mean, I guess it happens, right?
Yeah, that's very human. That's teenage years.
Yeah, exactly. And then once they reach maturity, that is not as prevalent until they choose for it to be prevalent, or they
Interesting.
choose to use this pheromone that pushes them into this rage like state. Which, if you play Halo 2, you play the games, that's when they drop their weapons and they become bullet sponges and they just charge right at you.
And did they give like an evolutionary reason, biological reason for that, or they just it's just
Um,
something they do?
it's something that they do, and their society strength is like that is how you get power, is through strength and being strong. So I think that's just over the course of their history, they're very aggressive creatures, very aggressive, their biology. So I think that's how it kind of evolved into that, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Heading into a little bit of the history. So like I said, they, well, I didn't say this. Their tier level when they were founded by the Covenant was they were able to reach tier 4. So even though they are described and look like these barbarian creatures, they are actually very smart. They were able to, and tier 4, for y'all who don't remember all the tier systems, tier 4 is space age. So they were able to travel in space, right? They're able to harvest stuff from their moons,
Whoa.
right? Um, but
I, I'm learning
like
so much.
because of their natural power hungriness and willing or desire to be in charge, they caused a civil war. And essentially, nuclear war went off, and that is why the planet is now has this nuclear waste, and it reduced their society from a tier 4 space traveling civilization back to tier 7, which is pre-industrialization.
Whoa.
So it's going back to like the 14 1500s, our time
No wonder
here.
they're pissed.
Yeah, exactly. They're just constantly angry. Um, so that is their tier level when they're found by the Covenant, but their history is still rich there of space travel. So I kind of assume like this world has like spaceships just crashed and
Just
abandoned.
idle. Yeah.
Yeah, and has almost like what the story of Halo is, right? They have these artifacts of a time past, and you don't know what exactly caused the destruction, or maybe they do know exactly this nuclear war is what caused the destruction. But the Covenant finds this planet, and at the time, the Jiralhanae elders were very sus to join the Covenant, but the younger Jiralhanae longed for a world that does not include nuclear waste and these dangers here because of their own desires, and choose to join the Covenant. And in doing so, they become they advance themselves back to tier 4 and beyond that because they've joined the Covenant.
Interesting. That motivated next level of the race makes me a little bit sad that they got totally pummeled.
Hmm, hmm. Yeah.
Not a lot sad, but some.
Yeah. Um, One of the biggest opponents to joining the Covenant are the Sangheili. So we'll get to that here in a little bit. But that just for the general vibe, Sangheili and Jiralhanae do not like each other throughout the entirety of Halo 2. Well, in Halo 2, you see that it is very, very evident that they do not like each other as far as the Great Schism goes. And then throughout the history, the Sangheili were their commanders, and they were not treated very well because they disliked the Jiralhanae. They felt like the Jiralhane's pack mentality would end up causing rifts in the Covenant, and essentially that is what happened.
I feel like when they started showing up more in the games is when you started seeing these great big super ornate Sangheili armors.
Yes, yeah,
And
yeah,
it
yeah,
was like they just started like ruffling their feathers.
yeah.
They
It
start
was
puffing up.
it was I mean, it's also because we get to see High Charity, which is like the
Yeah.
capital city of the Covenant, which is a spaceship that houses billions upon billions of people. So like we couldn't even imagine like how vast a spaceship is and the amount of power and people needed to just move it through slip space. Like that's just absolutely crazy. Anyways, so the Sangheili talk to the prophets, and they talk to the leaders of the Covenant at the time. So as they're joining the Covenant gives the Jiralhanae planets that are rich in resources to help um expedite their
Regrowth.
yeah, their regrowth and the reproduction. But they do not allow them and ban them from learning how to use how to use the mining materials. So they can get the materials, they're able to get all the resources, but they cannot learn how to use them. So it creates this dependency on the Covenant for them to continue working with them because they have no means of actually running these things on their own. Uh,
Interesting.
I thought that was
Interesting.
very,
Interesting.
very interesting. Such a toxic relationship.
Yeah, for real. For
um,
real.
so that leads us into their current role in the Covenant, right? As we're going into Halo 2, Halo 3, they're used as cannon fodder. So almost the equivalent of grunts is what they're used for. But obviously, they're a lot stronger than grunts, but they are put up in situations that they are bound to lose. They're these shock troopers that go in with very, very high casualty rates. And we'll get into one of the factions that does this, and that is where Atriox comes out, who is one of the leaders of the Banished, one of the leaders of the newer Halo games coming forward. In Halo 2, they take the place of honor guards from the Sangheili, which is what we mentioned and alluded to earlier. And then after Halo 2, they become one of the main forces and leaders and factions of the Covenant and the Splinter Cell of the Covenant after that. So you start fighting them a little bit more. Like in Halo Infinite, they're one of the main enemies. And in Halo 5, I don't remember Halo 5, so we don't talk about that.
Halo 5 is like the Halo show.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. It's like
Terrible.
what is this? Anyways, um,
What are those?
so yeah, then we're going to Halo Infinite, right? They have formed the Banished, which is another large sect here in the world. It's a faction that's not necessarily the Covenant. They haven't allied with the humans because there are some Sangheili and there are some Covenant factions that have allied with the UNSC at the point of Halo Infinite. But in 2559, as Halo Infinite starts, or around that time frame, the home world of the Jiralhanae Doisiak is destroyed by Cortana and the Guardians. So they don't really have a place to go, and the people that the survivors of Doisiak have formed underneath the Banish and are underneath the leadership of Atriox. Um,
Interesting.
what I think is very very cool, because in Halo Infinite, the whole story takes place on a Halo ring, um, but the majority of the people, the majority of the surviving Jiralhanae are here, and they believe this Halo ring is going to be their new home world. Which, how crazy would that be
For
to
real.
have this, very smart, sophisticated ape-like species um, starting to find Forerunner technology and learn how to use it and incorporate it into their society.
I didn't really realize that Jiralhanae got hosed more than anybody else in the human war.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, and that's very recent, right? So a lot of the lore has started to come out post, Halo 4, Halo 5, with all the books and novels and some of the graphic novels and things like that. So they really got flushed out to just be, like you said, get hosed down quite a bit. I mean, their main home world that housed up to 12 billion people were gone and destroyed. So billions of people, after nuclear waste, have been destroyed, which is absolutely crazy.
There were shock troopers all the way through their lineage. Rough,
Absolutely.
rough. Those
Um,
poor apes.
yeah, for real. Heading into a little bit of their culture and society. So, like we mentioned earlier, they have a pack and clan mentality. They believe life is a test of strength. They will use whatever
I agree
weapon.
with that.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, not just mentally, but also physically. They more so focus on the
Oh,
physical.
heard. Yeah, my bad.
You're like,
I'm not big on physical strength.
you're like, a test of strength of will, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
They will use whatever weapons they can grab their hands on, but prefer to use their own weapon makes. A lot of their weapons have some type of blade on them so they can use them up close and personal. And if it doesn't have a blade, they will quickly add a blade to it. So I can't remember where I heard this from, whether it's a graphic novel or just in the history of the knowledge that I know about the Jiralhanae. Is they would like grab an assault rifle and use it for a little bit, and then if they end up holding on to it, would add some type of spike to it somewhere and kind of create these different modified weapons that can do a little bit more damage than just what the actual gun can do.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so most of their weapons feature a blade, including their gravity hammer. Like, that is what they are known for. The Sangheili have their energy swords. The
Is that
Jiralhanae
okay?
have
Okay.
the gravity hammer.
When you're fighting them, like they would beat you over the head with it, but sometimes they would just like hit you with the butt end of it.
Yep.
And I always thought that was just like an insulting way to die.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
there's a blade on it.
Yep. Yeah, so most of
Well,
their guns, so you have
no fucking wonder.
the spiker. The spiker has blades on it, which I think was introduced in Halo 3. The brood shot, which is definitely in Halo 2, has a nice spike at the end of it. The gravity hammer has a spike on it, and it's also a blunt weapon. Of course, it has like this little blast that kind of goes out. I'm trying to think some of their other weapons off the top of my head, and I really can't think of any. But yeah, they like to add their own twist and variety to it.
I remember the first time I got killed by one of the gravity hammers. The body of Master Chief hit a glitch in the game and fell out of the map, and I was
Yeah.
like, "What the fuck just
Yeah,
happened?"
and that's what they do in canon.
It's like it hits you right out of reality. I was
Yeah.
like, "What is that?"
Yeah, absolutely.
Terrifying.
So they think that they're, I mean, it's very interesting. We talked about dragons recently, and as you start looking at other species and creatures, they all think that they're the best, right? Every one of these creatures think, "Oh, I'm going to be better than every other species." The Sangheili, I'm sure, believe that they're better species than the Jiralhanae, and the prophets think they're better species. The Sanshayum think they're better species. I think probably the grunts and jackals might be at the bottom of the totem pole, but they still think that they're dope, you know?
Ungor are just like partying, dude.
Heck yeah. So the basic unit of the Jiralhanae is the pack and their clan leaders. Leadership is founded in the strongest of their males. That is going to be their chieftain, and that is known for their feats on the battlefield, their marital ties, and their sexual success. Which is very interesting. Um, the ceremonial gravity hammer of the chieftain will be passed down from one chieftain to another in some type of ritual to mark that it is time for another to take its place. It's very interesting because they do know when they've reached their limits. I think that's pretty cool, you know.
Then why does the ammo run out?
I know, right?
Anyway.
Maybe there's like a way to like refill the like thing, or maybe it takes time. I don't know. Who can say? This brings us to the female Jiralhanae. They do not have a current role in their military, as they take the roles of mothers and caretakers. So there's no other explanation given. I am going to assume that the reason they do this and is just to try and maintain their species being alive, because there's the explosion from Cortana and destroying their homeworld, and then before that, their own nuclear wars that brought them back down to tier 7. I think it is solely they just need their species to survive, and so the females have to continue reproduction, and they reproduce just like humans do. So yeah.
Nice.
They
Keys to the culture, female Jiralhanae.
Yeah, exactly. They view family and lineage as one of the most important things in their life. And so if a pack member does die, that is a part of their clan, a part of their pack. The Jiralhanae will go into that pheromone induced rage.
Interesting.
The lifespan of the Jiralhanae is 70 to 90 years old. Only recently were they able to move up to this age.
70 to 90.
Very, very, very similar to humans.
Similar to Ungoi, right? No, Ungoi is a long time.
I think
This is
Ungor
like
was a
the
little.
shortest lived covenant species.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But it's because of their recent access to medicines from the Covenant.
I'm getting mad. These things have been really mistreated.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I mean, but think before that, it was less than that. So it was, I think they said like 40 to 60 years. Like, good God. Yeah. So that is the quick and dirty with it. So this is as we're looking at Jiralhanae and how you could use this in your own world, right? They have different clans and they have that kind of barbarian attitude. They are also honor bound to an extent. They will take one-on-one combat very seriously. So if they get challenged to one-on-one combat, it would be dishonorable for anyone else to interfere in that one-on-one combat. And there is a level on Halo 3 where you can do this as Master Chief, and there are a bunch of brutes, and as long as you don't shoot any other brute, you can go and fight a gravity hammer wielding brute one-on-one, and the rest of the brutes won't attack you.
I was gonna say, isn't that part of the game that happens?
Yeah,
It's like super
absolutely.
intense.
Yeah, absolutely. I always forget when I play through it, so I just go in and start blasting. I haven't experienced it, but I've seen other people do
Mob.
it.
That's funny.
But yeah, so how I've used it in my world is I have a figure like Atriox in my world that has their clans and has their kind of spies in different areas, and they are still very honor bound to the battle, and definitely identify as trying to be the strongest in the world and being the strongest in the area. So that's how I added it into my world. And looking at this, I mean, there are so many other cultures that you could do this to, and just repurpose it and not put Jiralhanae, but put your own kind of little twist on it.
My immediate reaction is like, let's see their family lives more.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
if you're gonna bring them in, then it's like, well, bring them in as maybe this is where your characters start, and then they see like the family units, and then we get to glassing and nuclear war and all that
Yeah.
shit. It's like, give us a reason to miss it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I definitely missed the main Jiralhanae in the story when they died off in Halo,
Yeah.
but only because they were sort of like the honor bound characters, like
Mhm.
how samurai are depicted,
Yeah.
or like the old school knights, like Prince Arthur.
Mhm. Mhm.
All those folks is like, oh, they're honor bound. This is their choice and why, but we don't really get a good taste of why.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And they are honor bound for the most part. For the most part, because they still do want to become the most powerful, and obviously they hate the Sangheili the most. So in Halo 2, and I was learning this lore today actually. There is a point where the Great Schism happens, which is the re-changing of the guard between the Sangheili and the Jiralhanae, which ends up being this civil war in the Covenant. But what happens here is one of the prophets asks the council of the Sangheili to come to the control room in the Halo that you play on Halo 2, and the Jiralhanae hold an ambush for them. So they are honor bound, but they will still also ambush you and kind of do dirty tactics to win their place in what they feel they deserve.
Yeah, and I feel like there's got to be some emotional beat in them going into a rage, right? Like
Mhm.
that's got to be a super emotional thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
if you use them, it's like, well, this has to be like you did in our campaign. Like
Hmm.
it was always like this sort of descent into strong emotion, which then led to madness.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
thought it was really cool how you did it.
Hmm.
Um, and I think the video games were just kind of quick with it.
Yeah, yeah, I think they were. I think it was like, oh, they took a certain amount of damage. They're gonna drop their
Boom.
weapon. You're getting close. Like they're gonna start hitting you. But I think if you're to use it in your own story, yeah, absolutely, I would tie that anger emotion to more other emotions that's happening, not just oh, I'm getting hurt. I'm gonna get mad.
Yeah, like they're picturing their family back on their home world, and they're like, "This person's gonna kill them too," and then they're like, "Ah,
Yeah,
can't let that happen."
yeah. And then
Rage.
also with the honor bound part, like when
Something
y'all
cooler than that,
yeah.
probably.
When y'all did end up killing the Tartarus in our game, in our home game, the rest of his bodyguards ended up backing off because it was like this one-on-one combat that essentially lasted, for so many sessions, whereas
Dude,
things would
yeah.
end and then, not continue. You and Tartarus went down, and so it was like it and then got revived. And so there's this weird dynamic still of the honor that y'all both hold, and then here at the end, like you finally killed him, and then it was like, well, that was an honorable death. He deserves to win this fight. And they backed off, even though you killed another one of them in that group. I think there was a group of 4 or 5 of them, and then Tartarus and another one went down. And it was like, well, this was the loss that we deserved, and now not that we're ducking with our tails behind our back or between our legs, but we are going to accept that this was the loss that happened
And
here.
wasn't there a moment because he had a very large ceremonial weapon? And
Mhm.
wasn't there a moment where my character gave it back to them?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
So, and that definitely that was definitely impactful to them because it was like, oh, this weapon doesn't belong to me, but then you giving it to him is like, well, it deserves to be with our people, so they're not gonna not take it.
yeah, it very much felt like an inherited weapon for
Mhm.
some. I mean,
Yeah,
for some reason, how you introduced it felt like they'd have been around a long time. So it was like giving it back was a big choice in the game at the time.
yeah,
And now hearing the backstory, it's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Good, happy coincidence. I mean, you set it up, so it wasn't like that much of a coincidence, but
Yeah,
it felt like I made the choice.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely did. There are a couple interesting factions of the Jiralhanae. We have the Banished, which I've referenced a couple of times. That is the big kind of faction here. But later into the games or later into the lore, what this faction ends up becoming is the Jiralhanae who revolted against the Covenant and revolted against the Great Journey and the Prophets, and then anyone else who viewed uh, that they should be free from the oppressions of the UNSC and the Covenant can join. So in this faction of the Banished, the Jiralhanae are in charge, but there are all the factions of the Covenant and humans who don't want to be a part of the UNSC anymore. So it's a very much like we will accept you as long as you accept this belief that we want to be free and we want to do our own thing.
That
Um,
alone would have been a dank place for the Halo show to be.
oh my gosh, absolutely. And then I got 2 more factions here. We have the Hand of Atriox. So what these people are what is referenced in Halo Infinite are Spartan killers. So those are the ones that have that high reputation, that high lethality, and they go out and kill Spartans, which is a really should be a very very big deal. Which I feel like in the Halo show they didn't necessarily hit those beats the way that it could have been hit. But imagine one of those the Hand of Atriox if you're playing Halo Reach. The people that knock out Noble Team slowly, those would be on that level of the Hand of Atriox. There is one elite that continues through the story, continues to kill the team of Noble Team through Halo Reach, and does die at the very end of it. But that would be that level of Hand of Atriox. Lastly,
Interesting.
we have the Blood Stars, and
I still
so
haven't played Reach.
it is a
I need
very
to.
fun game. It is a very good game, and the story is actually done very well.
It looked like the graphics are super cool and the maps are like really evenly balanced. But
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And
never played.
that's the only game that you can actually customize your Spartan, and then you can
What?
in the cinematics you can play as the Spartan that you customize.
What?
Yeah,
Okay, that's cool.
yeah.
All
It
right.
is very cool because your Spartan is in the cutscenes. Ah, so cool.
I need to
Um,
download that one.
and then the blood stars, so I mentioned earlier, right, there are these shock troopers that go in, and they are the ones that go in, they know that they're going to die. um Atriox was a part of the blood stars, and so they would go in packs of 40, and their death rate was like 99%. Atriox was the one that would survive, and finally over time he got fed up, and this is where the creation of the banish starts to happen. He got fed up with his brothers and his pack, right? That they love their clan ties are so strong that they just continue to be get sent to their death over and over and over again. And he's just seeing more of his clan die over and over. So he finally has enough of it. He revolts and leads a revolt on a planet after his pack of blood stars dies, and starts this creation of the banished.
That is so cool.
Post Covenant, he has a couple of the elites who see what happens, and they end up agreeing with his dislike of the prophets, and they turn over to his side, and he has them trained. He has the Silent Shadow, which is like this assassin group of Sangheili, start training people in the banished to eliminate opponents of the banished. So
Wow.
that the blood stars then becomes this elite group of assassins pretty much.
I would 100% be on board with that game,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
dude.
There's again so much lore to be used for a great game.
That's such a
Which
strong start to it. I mean, like you could start all of Halo with that. Like that's nuts.
mm-hmm.
That's such a good story.
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah. Some disappointing news came out
right.
recently that 343 has been pitching a lot of games over the last couple of years, and Microsoft has been turning down all of their game ideas. So the only game we've gotten was Halo Infinite, and I was like, dude, that is awful. So like Helldivers is really big right now, and there was a Hell Jumpers, right? So you could play the ODSTs in Halo. And there was ideas for that happening. There were ideas for like Flood games to happen and other avenues to explore the Halo universe. But instead, we got the Halo show.
Hell yeah. Dude, okay. I feel like it's the most egotistical and vindictive version of the story because it's like at the beginning, it's like we have this story that's been around for 20 years. It's huge.
Mhm.
It's huge, huge, huge. But I'm going to take everything in it and just get rid of it. And
Yeah.
it's like, what an ego to come up to a story that's been around that long and just be like, yeah, I can do a better job.
Yeah.
I'm just going to get rid of everything that they had. And then after bad reviews, just intentionally do it worse.
Yeah.
It's like that's where the vindictive comes in. It's like, dude, what in the world? Fuck
Yeah.
that show.
For real. It is very rough. I know that people want us to support the show so that we can get more Halo, but
I wanted to.
it's so tough, man. It's so tough.
It's garbage.
Anyways, let's go back.
Inspiration, insanity.
Yeah.
Let's jump into our inspirations, eh?
Yeah. Shocker, it's not Halo.
Yeah. Dropping a big Paramount minus on that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I've been talking a lot. You go. What's your
Okay.
inspiration?
All right, for me, it's Wingspan by Stonemaier Games. It is a board game. It was designed by Elizabeth Hargrave. It's an engine building game. But it's just really beautiful and really well put together, and that's true of all Stonemaier games. They put a lot of time and attention into the art and the actual pieces of the game.
Hmm. Hmm.
Everything is printed well. Everything it holds together well. It all has weight. It feels expensive. It feels like it's just such a fun game to touch.
Yeah.
And then you get it on, get it out on the table out in front of you, and it plays so smoothly.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
when I was reading the rules, I was like, this feels like it's gonna be really complicated.
Yeah.
And then we played like a half of a round. Like one of us took a turn, and we were both like, "Oh, cool!"
Yeah.
And then just played through it so quick, so smooth. I mean, it's super super fun.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. You can play it where it's non-competitive too, so it's just like everybody's playing a game and trying to reach their objectives, and um, and it's really good. It occupies enough of your mind, and everything is so tactile and wonderful. I
Nice.
love that game. So shout out to Elizabeth Hargrave for making that game.
Solid. Solid.
Yeah.
My inspiration, you know, uh, just to be frank, we batch record these stuff, so I haven't had the time to uh read through one of the books you recommended to me yesterday. Um,
Nice.
but I just really love the idea, so much so of a book that was recommended that Henry recommended me, Kings of the Wild with a Y instead of an I, on Wild. And it sounds like it's the vibe of like these adventurers that had their adventuring party, and now an issue arises and someone has to go to the rest of the group and get the gang back together again. And it reminds me of like some Blues Brothers shit, like the band, right? But it's also like this kind of vibe and feel, like as we get older in age, like a lot of people, like, I mean, we're still relatively young, but like as we feel older in age, um we see young cats like doing the same things that we used to do, and we're able to, as far as like work and our productivity level, we know how to do things through experience, so we don't have to use, especially like physicality as much. We can find the shortcuts. We already know how to do the job effectively, whereas some of the young cats are still trying to figure out how to do it effectively, so they're having to rely on either just speed or just strength. And so it reminds me of these adventurers like going out, but they're like
They're like
they they
retired.
they feel like they're still young. Like, "Oh, I can do that. I remember doing that." And it's like, "Well, you've been drinking for the last 6 years heavily.
Straight
Like,
up, yeah.
are you sure you can climb that wall that you used to when you're like young and sprightly? Well, maybe not. Are you sure you can take that fall from as high up as you can? Like, I know you've done it before, but this was like 20 years ago." So I just love, like, I'm really excited to see the shenanigans that happen. So yeah,
It's
that's
really
what's been
good.
inspiring me, and to like have an adventure group like somewhere in the world that's like, "Oh yeah, I can do that too." And it's like, ooh, maybe
Nope.
not. And I know in fantasy, like there's always like, "Oh, there's a level 20 retired adventurer." It's like, dude, get out of here. Like, unless they're like some immortal being, like at some point, and I'm really
It goes
excited.
down again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. At some point, it has to come back down again. At some point, you can't do, if you're a fighter at level 20, you can't do 4 attacks in one turn, and plus an action surge, and so 8 attacks in one turn when you haven't done it in 2 decades, or done anything close to it in 2 decades.
Yeah. It's by Nicholas Eames. It's a really good book. And it feels like the characters are like sort of unlovable at the beginning, but it's almost because they don't respect themselves. And then through the book, it's like you really get attached to them, like
Nice.
really intense attachment. And it has all the fun moments of like they refer to everybody them as bands.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's like there's a lot of references to like music, there's a lot of
Oh,
references
cool,
to
cool.
like um old friends they used to have, and sort of like every fantasy trope you ever wanted to experience
Yeah,
as like just an old group of dudes is in there. It's super fun and funny and witty and
yeah.
all that. It's good.
That's awesome.
It reminds me what you said reminds me of Netflix just had a match between Nadal and some newer dude. I haven't
Mhm.
watched tennis in a long time, but it was on Netflix and I
Yeah.
was like, nice. So I watched it,
Mm.
and it was like the younger guy, he used the first two sets to kind of warm up,
Mhm.
and then they got to the tiebreaker because it was like an exhibition. It's not like a ranked
Yeah,
match.
yeah.
They had a tiebreaker for the third, and in the tiebreaker, it's like he just started pulling ahead, just a little bit at a time, and it's like because he's like 12, 13, 14 years younger.
Yeah, yeah.
And it all just had a year off. Everybody thought he was going to retire, and he came back after that. I was like, whoa, wild. Anyway,
Crazy.
whatever. It's cool, and youth does is able to use the physicality a lot,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
for
cool.
sure, for sure.
All right, time for me to talk a lot. Let's
Here
go.
we go.
Sangheili. All right. So the homeworld of the Sangheili is Sanghelios, as you can imagine.
I'm super
So
creative.
the home of Earthers is Earth. So Sanghelios is the fourth planet in the Earth's system, and the temperatures range from 23 to 204 Fahrenheit.
That is hot.
It is a arid, deserty planet, and it's harsh, arid, which just means deserty, with a yellow to red sky. It can also experience blue, but it said that the main colors are yellow to red,
Yeah.
which is kind of wild. Just anytime you've experienced a yellow or red sky here on planet Earth, I don't think anybody else has experienced other planets out there. But in case you have,
Yeah.
here
right.
on planet Earth, if you see those, it's pretty scary. Means something bad is happening. Part of the reason for that, they have the same gases in the air as we do here on Earth. So oxygen is the main one. That's why they breathe so well on our kind of planets. But they have three suns: Urs, Feed, and Jory. So that sounds pretty Netherlandsy, but that is where the Sangheili are from. They have three suns, so that contributes a lot to that yellow to red sky. Because the planet is arid and dusty, they have to live on coastlines. Most of their cities are along the water, but that's totally fine because most of the surface of the planet is water, and the physical land bodies are broken up quite a bit. So there is a ton of coastline, and that's where the cities are located. They have roughly 8 billion population.
Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty dank. They had some reference to a very specific conflict. It's like bloodletting or something like that that said it brought the population down to 4 billion. But I was like, that's a history part that's probably not part of what we're doing here. So,
Yeah, yeah. It's probably way higher. I mean, that's the planet is probably higher than that now.
yeah. So anyway, it said 8 billion right now. So they farm. I thought this was interesting. They had a whole section on what animals they hunt and like what grains they eat and all this stuff. But one of the more interesting ones was that they farm kolo for meat. So it's kind of like the cow of the
Oh,
Sangheili.
okay. Yeah.
The kolo looks like a salamander, and a bison had like a really big baby.
Okay.
It's
That is
really
interesting.
it's really odd. It's like maybe a tadpole
Yeah.
would be a tadpole and a bison. I think would be a better example. So look up the Colo, Colo, on Sanghelios, and you'll get a fun little picture of the really weird looking thing. It Sanghelios is or was the homeworld of the Covenant. So that was like the home place of the Covenant until they got High Charity completed, which I thought was really entertaining. So it's like when the Covenant was created, it was just the Sangheili and the, what are they called?
Senshayun.
Senshayun.
Or the prophets.
The
for those who
prophets.
don't-
Yeah. And so this was like the first in our world of Halo. This was the first interspecial hub in the universe.
Yeah.
Super cool. Did not know that. So Sanghelios was the first home of the Covenant, and just as a general note, it was littered with Forerunner tech. So Sanghelios was definitely used by the Forerunners, and that's part of the reason it was so easy for the Senshayun to coax them over to this idea that the Forerunners should be worshipped and the Great Journey should be a part of their religion. Super cool. Biological summary. Let's get it. So
Yeah. What do they look like?
Sangheili are pretty tall, 7 to 8.5 feet in most cases. So they're a little bit shorter than the Jiralhanae, but they're, definitely taller than Master Chief. He's 7
barely.
foot, right?
I think he's 7 foot something.
Oh, dang it. Okay. So the taller
I'll
ones,
look it up. I'll look it up.
the taller ones are taller than Master Chief. How about that? They're way, way less than the Jiralhanae at 300 to 400 pounds, which I thought was really interesting because there's a good mental manipulation element to the story because they subjugated the Jiralhanae and they're almost 1,000 pounds lighter, even best case.
Yeah.
So you figure they would lose that war 9 times out of 9. Sangheili, ooh, these words are long. Sangheili have leathery skin. It's mainly brown, but black, white, and blue are possibilities,
Mhm.
just not nearly as often as shades of brown. Scales do appear on Sangheili, but it's mostly around the neck in youth, most common. They're most often shed as they reach adulthood,
Mm.
and that's thought to be a holdover, an evolutionary holdover from
Oh,
when the
okay.
parents would carry the youth by the neck using their mandible.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
they'd pick them up, carry them, and they had these scales to help alleviate any pain from that. So it was like an evolutionary adaptation. I thought that was really entertaining.
Yeah, for sure.
Sangheili, as we all know, have four mandibles with no bottom jaw. So anytime you've seen Sangheili, they just have this really uncomfortable looking mouth.
So, if you don't like can't visualize like the four mandible jaws, think of like the predator, right? The predator also has those four jaws, I believe, right?
Do they? Oh yeah, they have that little
Yeah,
like
yeah.
web thing that opens with thorns on the end
Yeah,
or
exactly. So
teeth.
so think kind of like that, not quite
Not
as
webbed.
webby.
Yeah.
They're just like four, if you can see the visual, like there are four mandibles and they're here and then they open up and close.
Yeah. Instead of having a jaw, they have two fingers on either side that have teeth on them.
Yeah, essentially.
And no bottom jaw, so it's just open there on the bottom.
Mhm.
And because of that, they have to eat just like big chunks of whatever they're eating. So they just sort of shred off pieces of meat
Mhm.
of the colo and go ahead and throw that back.
Yeah.
They have double pectoral muscles, which contribute to their great strength.
Mm.
So just consider, a bodybuilder throwing up a few hundred on the bar. Well, now he has double the muscle. So
Dang, that's crazy.
whatever the human number is, you can double for Sangheili. I thought that was really entertaining.
Interesting, interesting.
They have indigo colored blood, which is considered the blood is considered to be the honor of Sangheili. So if you see the blood for any reason other than sort of ritualized combat or like the combat of an enemy that they've decided is evil, then that is great shame. It's a very shameful thing to see the blood. So even going to the doctor and things like that, they're like, yeah, shameful,
Shameful.
shame, shame.
Oh, that's
So
funny.
anytime you spill their blood on the Halo games, just know you're causing them great shame.
I just think of on playing Halo Combat Evolved. Like, I don't know if you do this with the OG Xbox game, but like we would do the blood splatters
Uh-huh.
on the elite. So you just hit them, and like blood would continue to go on, and then your parents would come by and be like, "What is this game? What is this so much?" And it's like, no, it's coloring the walls is what we're doing because it's purple. But all their ancestors are like, shame,
Shame.
shame.
Every punch. Just know that from now on. Bring you so much more joy.
Shame, shame.
Every punch. Okay.
Oh, that's
So
funny.
Sangheili live 170 to 240 years on
Wow.
average, which is a longo time.
Yeah.
60 years is the age when they're considered military ready. So,
Wow.
yeah, I
That's so
know.
crazy.
And here in the US, we're like 10-year-olds. Just send them.
I
Uh,
I
now
know, right?
18, right?
Yeah.
But 60. Can you imagine going into the military at 60? But for them, with all their scientific advancements, 60 years is a good end of youth kind of age where
Mhm.
they are well versed in all tactics and combat, and we can send them out there, and they should do well. Early accounts of the Sangheili before all of their scientific advancements showed that they lived somewhere between 20 and 30 years on average. So their society is so advanced that they have been able to now stretch their lifespan to 240 years. So
Wow.
220 more years than they were previously able to have on
That is
average.
absolutely crazy.
It's bonkers.
Yeah.
So they also reproduce by laying eggs. They don't
Mhm.
have any external genitalia.
Mhm.
That's just an excuse to say genitalia on the show. Um,
Flagged.
yeah, flagged. But they lay eggs. I found it. I couldn't find anywhere how many eggs or how often they were able to lay them. But yeah, they lay eggs.
Mm.
There you go. There was some random person on Reddit that said three. It's definitely three. And I found no supporting evidence anywhere.
Yeah.
So somewhere out there is very confident that
Mhm.
they lay three eggs. They have no idea how often, but they lay three.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so there you go. One random Reddit person has now changed the course of lore in the Halo world. Uh,
Solid.
moving on to history, the clan battles of Sanghelios. Basically, it's a lot of feudal states, a lot of tribalism, a lot of warring factions. No
Mhm.
matter what story we are in, they attribute it to feudalism because if you look at human history, tribes
Yep.
had tons of war. So Sanghelios is no different, but their tribal period or their infighting period was summed up in the title Clan Battles of Sanghelios.
Mm.
So they just sort of lumped all that history in together and they're like, okay, pre space flight, pre covenant, we'll just call that Clan Battles of Sanghelios. Kind
Gotcha.
of interesting. It was almost dismissive in the way it was introduced, and I
Hmm.
thought that was interesting too because it's like the shame of this spacefaring culture.
Yeah, yeah. I also feel like it's probably like one of those things where the history is continued to be told by the victors, so that it's very tough to actually get some type of accurate representation of what's happened because it's so shameful to lose that it's like we don't even talk about you anymore. So imagine how many clans were just lost to the history because they lost the fight. They lost the clan battle.
And that's interesting too because history is no matter how it's told, as long as it's something that is honorable,
Hmm.
is a huge part of family groups.
Hmm.
And families are tribes in a lot of ways
Yeah.
for the Sangheili. But they have poems, they have sculptures, and that tell the family history. And it's a huge honor for your life to be entombed in that way.
Mm.
So that's sort of the goal of the warriors of the Sangheili.
Nice.
So it's an even bigger deal to tell your history in a very positive way.
Yeah. Solid.
The Arbiter was, to get back on track here, the Arbiter was a role of great honor, the single leader of the Sangheili early on. This is
Hmm.
before
Hmm.
everything else happened. So um, it was like a judge, it was a leadership role in Sangheili culture until Urso Labat came along and his regime was very bloody and he was a tyrant and he took over as much of the planet. So the way tribes were split up was they had a Kaiden that ruled like this group,
Hmm.
and then they had a Kaiden that ruled a group over here,
Yeah.
and that's how the whole planet was split up. And then an arbiter ruled over those Kaiden, right?
Yeah.
And after Urso Labat, who just got rid of all the Kaiden and decided the planet was his, right?
Hmm.
And he ruled in a very terrible way until the Swords of Sanghelios rose in opposition, who were prominent Kaibots who came together as a elite unit who then took down Urso Labat, killed him off, and restored peace to the planet. So
That's cool. That's
yes,
cool.
Star Warsy sort of
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I brought peace to my new empire.
Yeah.
That was what I was thinking, but I
I was
didn't want to.
like,
I didn't want to take us off off track.
that must have been how my brain brought it up. You were thinking of it. It just telemarketed over.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're back to a peace level. Um, it was a tier 2 civilization when it became part of the Covenant. So the Sangheili had already gone to like space travel, slip space travel, and had multiple planets when they ran into the Shenshashu.
Senshayum.
Senshayun. The Senshayun. Sorry. I'm being silly.
Funny enough, I haven't messed that word up, and I usually mess
know.
S words up pretty bad.
You nailing all of these names, dude. I'm like flopping all over the place. So anyway, so they were a level 2 when they ran into the prophets.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. See what I did there? They created the covenant after the war with the Senshayun.
Hmm.
And basically they ran into each other and oh my gosh,
The
I can't. The
prophets.
prophets. The prophets wanted to use Forerunner technology to go on the Great Journey,
Hmm.
and they wanted to activate it. They wanted to see what the powers were. They were on this giant ship that was Forerunner
Hmm.
technology
Hmm.
at the time,
Yes.
and the Sangheili thought that blasphemy. So we need to fight to the death.
Yeah.
So that's what they did for a long time. The Sangheili, after losing for a good amount of that war, started using Forerunner tech as well and even things out. At least that's what I read.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that true?
So
Okay.
I think it is very important to note here, and we'll talk about Sanshayum in a different episode. But you got to look and think. Look at the Sanshayum that we see in Halo 2, right? The prophets of truth, regret, and mercy, and they seem to be like these old, fragile beings, and very much seem to be like the older political group of people. But think about the Sanshayum were beating and pushing back the Sangheili in this war and what they're capable of doing. And to me, that blew my mind when I started reading and learning about the little bit more of the lore, that these prophets were able to push back the Sangheili, which is wild. Because I would not have thought that at
And
all.
most of the sources said that their technology, because they had already been dabbling with Forerunner technology,
Mhm.
their technology was so far advanced from what the Sangheili had.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, there's no way.
Yeah, and so yeah, and we can get into like how Forerunner tech was littered across the galaxy, um, uh, but the Sentium happened to be at a closer, the tide could have been changed if the positions were changed of where the Sentium and the Sangheili were placed of by the Forerunners and the reseeding that happened, but that's just not how the cards rolled. So they actually had that technology
For the
to
prophets, it
be.
was.
Yeah, exactly. Crazy, absolutely crazy, and what blew my mind when I read that.
Yes, the War of Beginnings has a lot of fun lore,
Hmm.
and that's what the war was called. It was ended by the writ of union and the creation of the covenant. And the part of the writ of union was that the prophets would get rid of their dreadnought, which was this massive ship that was Forerunner technology. They decommissioned it to, come to a treaty and join the covenant.
Hmm.
So the covenant at the beginning was just the prophets and the Sangheili. They were the first two members. I thought that was pretty cool too. And again, the Sanghelios was the first place where the covenant convened, and that's really neat
So
too.
fun fact too, just to kind of think about human history.
Love it.
This comes at the War of the Beginnings was the first age of conflict, which happened in 938 BCE to 852 BCE, according to Earth timeline.
So when does the Halo games? When's that?
2552 current year, or 2552. So that happens,
It's
what,
almost 3,000 years
3,000
ago
years? Yeah.
or later. Interesting,
Hmm.
interesting, interesting. The covenant was around for 3,000 years.
Hmm.
What?
Hmm.
Cool. Okay. See, I'm learning all kinds of stuff. The current role of the covenant in the covenant for the Sangheili is they're the most prominent military power. They're the ones that are like organizing strategy and leading troops and things like that. They're the with the exclusion of the Jiralhanae who get added last.
Hmm.
They are the most vicious fighters, and so they're the easy pick. But they are also religious zealots that follow the great journey blindly. So they definitely get, I mean, with a few notable exclusions to that, but
Yeah.
they get very into the great journey and the honor that comes to them. Even their blood is honor bound, right? But
Yeah.
the honor that comes to them by following the great journey in battle is huge culturally
Hmm.
through the entire history of their people. That is huge. So they are the natural role of military power. And for providing that service to the covenant, they get a lot of food and materials and all kinds of shit that gets
Hmm.
sent to Sanghelios as payment for them being the military power. Let's see. We already talked about the Great Schism, so I'm going to skip that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Culture and society. They're
Society.
Sanghelios or the Sangheli have a warrior society, groups of tribes. They're called keeps
Hmm.
that are ruled by a single Kaiden, which we talked about. An interesting practice that they had for a long time that was like in the more modern times of their society gotten rid of. I'm going to brutalize this name. Shirwisha Wash.
Yeah. No, there's like one vowel, two
Shirwisha
vowels,
Wash.
and it's like 14 letters.
Schwash. Anyway, it's a ritual dismemberment.
So it probably sounds like swash, wash, wash.
Ooh, nice. Hey, that was good. Somebody needs to be hired for voiceovers on the next game if they can ever get past Microsoft. Anyway, so it's ritual dismemberment and display of enemy skulls. So you're going to see a lot of that in the art of their planet and things like that. So pretty cool there. It was considered pretty brutal in the more modern times of them being in the Covenant, which I guess you could say.
So think about what the was. It's the legendary icon. It's the skull with the two swords in the back and the shield.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool. I like that because it's the enemy skull. I like it.
Love it. So another honor thing. You steal the blood and the organs and everything, and then you keep the skull to say this was someone you killed. So yeah,
I feel like the
say it one more
design.
time. That was dope.
Sure, 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 sure.
Nice.
So I feel like the Sangheili have like this mix of like tribal, samurai, and a little bit of predator. Because like even the predator had strands of different like kills or skulls of their bounties and things like that. So I think that's pretty. I mean, shoot, even Mandalorians have some aspect of like their kills and things like Boba Fett in Return of the Jedi. He's got the braid of a Wookiee for one of the kills that he has. So I think those kind of honor bound societies always have something to reflect their kills.
Commemorate.
Hmm.
This is a sacred thing, right?
Yeah.
They have their talisman.
Hmm.
The family units of the Sangheili own their own saga wall, which is chiseled stone that commemorates family actions during war and
That's
legacies of
so
its
cool.
members. So they have to actually either do it themselves or have somebody chisel in the next history.
Hmm.
It often has little poem excerpts,
Yeah.
um, which can come from, but aren't necessarily from the family's battle poem, which every family unit has.
Oh, that's so cool.
It gives further detail to their exploits.
Mm. Mm.
So recite the battle poem in front of the saga wall, please.
Yeah, for real.
Anyway, pretty fun ritual there.
Hmm.
Family units are considered to be a tribe um, because real fathers are a secret for the Sangheili.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So
Yeah.
there's all kinds of like
Yeah.
Tristian or something like that pods that people will female Sangheili will pass notes to male Sangheili that they want to mate with.
Hmm.
They'll send them a note through these pods
Hmm.
so that no one sees the message going in or who it's going to.
Oh,
So
cool.
then they'll go and get their message out of the pod, and then they'll have their sexy little meetups, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. Yeah, for real.
But it's such a guarded secret that only the females. Well, I guess the actual dad knows too. But
Yeah, I think they allude to there's a book where I can't remember what the title is off the top of my head, but it's another trilogy of books where they're like Oni spies and stuff and they have to go to Sanghelios where they like allude to some of the Sangheli have an idea of who their sons are and they kind of get a feeling and vibe that that is probably their child, but it is still frowned upon to admit like you are my son because like that it's supposed to be kept a secret.
yes, and if there are multiple meetups, only the mother really knows.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And there's a certain level of swordsmanship that allows you to have multiple mates as a male. But again, the females choose
Mm.
ultimately, and to keep the familial structure, the females raise the youth, but they have a male that is more directly involved with their lives. That is referred to always as the uncle,
Yeah.
and sometimes the biological father is the uncle.
Oh,
That's
okay.
that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
against the rules, but it is kind of rare. And either way, it doesn't matter because they're not going to tell the kid.
So then how does the saga wall work?
Exactly. The tribe has a saga wall.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, 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 cool.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too. But and it is kind of unclear as the when they're talking about saga walls, they don't really make that differentiation
Mhm.
between families, but they say that the tribe is um the
Family.
ultimate place for your honor and your dedication.
Gotcha.
So as long as you're aligning yourself with the tribe, then you are doing good by your family. So I figure I couldn't find an actual answer, but I figure that means the tribe.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
So moving along here in culture, men are the warriors and women fulfill most other functions. So it's almost like there is almost nothing else that the men do if they're not in the military structure,
Mhm.
and then the women do all the all the other functions of society they do.
Yeah. I
And
think also in that book, Kilo 5 trilogy, that's what it is. There are some Sangheili who are not a part of the military or not a part of the defense force or whatever, and they are definitely looked down upon. And there is a lot of the other warriors think that Sangheili is sus for sure. And it ends up that Sangheili is sus for a couple different reasons, but I definitely remember that vibe of they're like like why hang around this guy? Like he shows no honor to anybody, and they kind of put him down quite a bit.
And if they can move up in the military, which is based on confirmed kills, so
Oh dang.
upper echelons could see confirmed kills of in the thousands. Um,
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
but some of the higher ranked Sangheili will do even female tasks
Mhm.
as a way to show their underlings that they should not be outworked by their superiors.
Oh wow.
And say like you need to do everything you can to ensure your species,
Okay.
right?
Cool, cool, cool.
So, but just the higher ranked ones, the lower ones are not encouraged to do that really,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they got to get their kill count up, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, so that takes us to the end of culture. There's a couple other things that I want to throw out, which is lifespan. We already talked about. Never mind. I'm reading through my notes and I had a double up. That's my
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
And then reproduction, I also had.
Yep.
And then interesting factions. I saw that you already talked about the banished,
Yeah.
and that's who I was going to talk about.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
So it's like interesting factions that we already knocked out of the park,
Yeah, yeah,
honestly.
absolutely.
So an
Yeah,
unceremonial end.
and then the silent shadow that I talked about, that the banish used to where is my note that
To
they
kill
used
their
to start
enemies.
train the blood stars.
Oh,
The silent shadow were an
right.
elite group of Sangheili who were the spies and assassins of the prophets. So that is another really important distinction. And the silent shadow, they were equipped with invisibility cloaks, and they would go out in squads of like 8 or 10. So they wouldn't, the ship masters wouldn't know that the silent shadow was on their ship. That's how secret they kept stuff. And then they would send reports back in to the prophets on, goings ons around the entirety of the covenant.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it is a very um badass group. And then you said the Swords of San Helios. That is actually still a group that does arise in Halo 5. I think that's probably the best part of Halo 5 is that some of it takes place on San Helios. So
Oh,
there
nice.
is like a little like not water mission, but you're going to like one of the ports, and they have a city that's on the water, and so you can only get through phantoms, and it's kind of like this almost like Clone Wars style, like the movie where like they're going and they're on the water, and then like all the bombs are going off and the artillery is going off, and they have to do a drop to get and assassinate a target. But the Swords of San Helios are the people who were loyal to the Arbiter and were allied with the UNSC, and there was a rival group who were not loyal and did not want anything to do with the humans because they still believe the prophets words of the great journey still need to be reached, and they didn't believe they were still on the side of the prophets throughout the entirety of the Halos, that the Halos still would have ascent them into godhood, but the Arbiter chose to uh hurt them and hurt their pride and hurt their religious belief by siding with the humans.
Yeah, I feel like the use of the arbiter. I'm changing text a little bit, but something
You know,
popped
you
in my head. Um, that the use of the arbiter by the Senchayun was a super cool tactical maneuver that they added into the lore that I
good.
thought was fun. Was that they took something that was like um, an honor bound
Ancient
position to
tradition.
hold.
Yeah.
Yeah, ancient tradition, and they turned it into something that was shameful
Hmm.
to hang around the necks of the Sangheili. And I just think that that's a really interesting thing because if you look at like Middle Ages Catholicism, that's exactly what they did.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
As
yeah.
whatever the Roman Empire, any of the I know Roman empires before Middle Ages. Don't at me. I'm just saying anywhere empires progressed, they would take Catholicism with them, and then they would add a part of the whatever religion was there into Catholicism in
Hmm.
that area,
Hmm.
and then slowly take that out of Catholicism and say that it was a shameful thing.
Oh, interesting, interesting.
So
Yeah.
they would include people at the beginning, and then they would just start morphing it over time, and then turn it into something that was evil.
Oh, cool, cool.
So anyway, that was a really interesting like lore thing that they added in the story that I was like, what? No way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was so disrespectful that the Arbiter now in Halo 2, you're following two main characters, Master Chief and the Arbiter, who is taking the fall for what happens in Halo. in the first game. And he is on a ship, and it's the first mission that you're going to play as the arbiter. And the shipmaster goes to him and pretty much says, you're shameful, and I've told my men not to do anything to defend you. If you die, you die. It's on you. Like you have brought such shame, and we do not really like you even being here. And so he really has to like prove his worth all over again. He's starting. It would almost be like his kill count just went back down to 0.
Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
he was a
they don't talk about, I mean, their lives are long, but they don't talk about how long does it take you to kill 1,000 enemies.
Oh yeah, for
you
sure.
know?
And does glassing count? Like if you're a shipmaster, does glassing count to your count? Because there is like a
Nice.
supreme commander called I've used the name in our home game, Zaitan.
Nice.
He's like the supreme commander, and he is supposed to be the one. He is the goat of Sangheili, and the one that everyone looks up to try and be like, because his kill count and his he is a great tactician. So I'm wondering what his kill count actually looks like, and does glassing a planet count towards your kill count?
That'd be so nice. You'd have billions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Darth Vader would be jealous at that one.
Right, for real, for real. But yeah, very interesting how they did the arbiter in Halo 2, and how it is very much a dishonorable role to be in.
Hell yeah. So just talk about that. Say that ritual thing one more time, and that'll wrap us out for today.
Where is it at?
Shush, shush, There we go. Perfect. I love it. Thank you for joining us for another Halo episode. I hope you enjoyed the mini, and we'll see you next week, bruh. Peace.
Thank you for watching the Creative Thinker podcast. We put a lot of love and attention into every show, and with that comes a lot of time and money.
You can help us out through the support links in the description. You can sponsor an episode. You can subscribe to our Patreon. And as always, you can follow, like, subscribe, and share all of our channels.
We are eternally grateful for your support as we continue to bring you more episodes of the Creative Thinker podcast.
Creative thinkers all over the globe. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.